Hi, my name is Amanda Hawkes, and I'm going to be talking about differences in boys and girls, a gender exploration. Girls and boys really are different. For many, many years, there's been controversy about whether gender differences truly exist or whether they are learned. I'll discuss recent research that proves that gender differences are in fact innate, but environments must also be changed so that the differences don't become limitations for boys or girls. Teachers and parents need to learn about these differences so they can creatively come up with new ways to cope with them. Male and female brains are organized in different ways. Scientists have recently discovered through research that female brain tissue is intrinsically different than male brain tissue. In 2004, a group of neuroscientists from several universities found that in males, many areas of the brain are rich in proteins coded by the Y chromosome. In females' brain tissue, many areas are rich in proteins coded by the X chromosome. For this experiment, 30 samples of brain tissue were taken from 30 different people in different areas of the brain. The scientists had no idea of the sex of the people who the samples were taken from. In the experiment, though, they were still able to identify the sex of each person correctly. These differences in the two sexes, then, are hardwired. Do these scientists' findings mean anything? The answer is yes. In fact, studies and recent research show differences in the way boys and girls hear, see, and more. Music therapy is used to help babies relax and grow. In a recent study, a woman hummed a lullaby to some premature babies again and again, and not at all to some of the other premature babies. The girl babies who were hummed to left the hospital 12 days earlier than the girl babies who were not hummed to. The premature baby boys, however, that were hummed to did not leave any earlier than the ones who were. This is because the girls were able to hear better than the boys, according to Stanley. Cohn-Wesson and her colleagues measured the acoustic brain response of over 60 newborn babies. They found that for a 1500 Hz tone played to the right ear, the average baby girl had an acoustic brain response about 80% greater than the response of an average baby boy. Another scientist, Jane Cassidy, confirmed this finding. She studied 350 newborn girls and boys and found that girls' hearing was substantially more sensitive than boys. For parents and teachers, this is important to understand. For example, a male teacher might think that he's talking in a normal tone, but to the young girl in the front of the classroom, he may seem to be screaming. On the other hand, many boys are misdiagnosed with ADD when a teacher raising her voice just a little bit or moving them to the front of the class could have been all they needed to focus. Besides differences in the ways that girls and boys hear, there are also differences in how they see. Researchers from Cambridge University studied whether females' ability to understand facial features was innate or learned. They conducted a study on babies the day they were born. They studied 102 babies and gave them a choice at looking at a woman's face or a mobile. After reviewing the videotapes of these babies, the researchers found that the baby boys were more interested in the mobile, while the girls were more interested in the woman's face. They concluded that beyond reasonable doubt, the sex differences in social interests are in part biological in origin. The study suggests that females are born already hardwired to prefer faces, while boys are hardwired to look at moving objects. The differences in what the baby girls and boys preferred to look at are due to differences in the anatomy of the eye. Every step in each pathway from the retina to the cerebral cortex is different in males and females. In the past 5 years, scientists have performed analysis of the eyes of males and females using microscopes and found that the retina has many receptors for sex hormones and that the retina of males is thicker than in females. The retina of the eye has many layers and converts light into a brain signal. One layer contains the rods and cones. Rods are sensitive to black and white, and cones are sensitive to color. The rods and cones send information to the next layer, ganglion cells, which can be large, M ganglion cells, or small, P ganglion cells. P cells are responsible for putting together information on colors and textures, while M cells put together information about movement and direction. These messages are then sent to the cerebral cortex. The difference in the thickness in male and female retinas is due to females having more of the smaller P cells and males more of the large M cells. This difference has a huge impact on many things. These findings help us explain why girls and boys prefer to use certain colors, draw certain pictures, play with certain toys, and more. Girls, as you can see in the picture, often use colors like red, orange, and green and draw noun pictures like people, flowers, etc. Boys often draw motion pictures and use colors like black, gray, and blue, as you can see in the picture. That's because those kind of pictures are more sensitive to their many M cells. Teachers need to be aware of these kind of differences so they can encourage both boys and girls. A doll with many textures will be more stimulating to a girl whose eyes are hardwired to be more sensitive to textures and colors. A moving truck will be more favorable to a boy whose eyes are hardwired to be sensitive to motion. Studies have shown that even before young children know what gender they belong to, they are already choosing toys that are typical of their gender. Ann Campbell, a child psychologist, studied 9-month-old toddlers and found that boys prefer the typical boy toys such as balls, trains, and cars, while girls prefer typical girl toys such as dolls. This is also due to the P and M cells discussed before. As I said before, the female and male brain is organized differently. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, they're just different. A 2003 study showed that the differences in the ways females and males navigate is already established by age 5. Neuroscientists found that they use different areas of the brain when navigating. Girls use the cerebral cortex and males use the hippocampus. Women usually use landmarks, men usually use directions. Also, emotions are processed differently in boys and girls. Negative emotions occur in the amygdala of the brain. In girls, a connection between this area of the brain and the cerebral cortex develops early. This allows them to talk more easily about their feelings. In boys, this is not the case. The connection between the two areas does not occur until later, which makes it harder for young boys to talk about their feelings. Girls' and boys' development happens at different times. Virginia Tech researchers looked at brain activity in 508 normal children. There were 224 girls and 284 boys, and their ages ranged from 2 months to 16 years old. They found that in females, areas of the brain that have to do with language and fine motor skills mature around 6 years earlier than in boys. They also found that in boys, areas of the brain that have to do with targeting skills and spatial memory mature around 4 years earlier than in girls. Research done in France and at Wellesley College support their findings. When the French researchers had 2-year-olds build bridges from blocks, they noticed that the boys were about 3 times more likely to build a bridge than the girls. When researchers at Wellesley conducted a study, they found that 3-year-old girls were able to interpret facial expressions just as good, if not better, than the 5-year-old boys. This is something that teachers also need to think about. For example, in kindergarten classes today, a lot of the goals involve using fine motor skills like writing letters of the alphabet and numbers, but as we can see from the Virginia Tech study, some of the boys may not have developed this area of their brain yet. Girls and boys judge risks in different ways also, and they differ in whether they choose to engage in risky behavior. We can attribute this to the different ways that they feel in risky situations. Boys get a thrill or tingly sensation caused by adrenaline. Girls tend to get dizzy or nauseated feeling because in these situations, their autonomic nervous system is more influenced by the parasympathetic nervous system, which releases acetylcholine instead of adrenaline as in boys. This means that boys probably enjoy risky situations and physical violence because of the thrill they get, and girls usually don't because of the undesirable feelings they get. Professor Tracy Shores and her colleagues from several universities have shown that stress improves male learning, but actually inhibits female learning. She showed that males exposed to stress had growth in neural connections in the hippocampus, but in females this growth was inhibited. For instance, while boys may really enjoy the pressure of having a timer counting down on the time they have to answer a question, girls may not. So it means teachers need to consider different methods of teaching for boys and girls. I have shown that there are innate differences between boys and girls. Of course, not all boys are the same and not all girls are the same, but the two certainly differ in many ways. Boys and girls' brains are organized differently, they see the world differently, they hear the world differently, they play with toys and playmates differently, and they need to be disciplined differently, and much more. It's very important for parents and teachers to become aware of these innate gender differences so that young children don't continue to suffer and struggle because the differences are not being approached appropriately. That's the end. Thank you.